On behalf of the committee, I welcome everyone to this public hearing into the Territory Coordinator Bill 2025. I welcome to the table to give evidence to the committee from the Australian Institute of Architects. We have joining us via telecommunication Miriam Wallace, the President of the NT chapter, and in person we have Karen Relph, Manager of NT chapter, and Rees, AJAR Architects. Thank you for coming before the committee. We appreciate you taking the time to speak to the committee and look forward to hearing from you today. This is a formal proceeding of the committee, and the protection of parliamentary privilege and the obligation not to mislead the committee apply. This is a public hearing and is being webcast through the Assembly's website. A transcript will be made for use of the committee and may be put on the committee's website. If at any time during the hearing you are concerned with that what you will say should not be made public, you may ask the committee to go into a closed session and take your evidence in private. Could each of you please state your names and capacity in which you are appearing?
I'm Rees. I'm appearing as an architect, talking on behalf of the Institute of Architects.
I'm Karen Relph, Manager of the NT chapter. I just basically put documentation together and provide it to the committee.
I'm Miriam Wallace. I'm the current President of the NT chapter, the Australian Institute of Architects, and an architect.
Thank you. And before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge my fellow committee members, the member for Gwoja, Mr Chansey Paech, the member for Drysdale, Mr Clinton Howe, the member for Johnston, Justine Davis, and joining us via telecommunications is Miss Ollie Carlson, the member for Wanguri. I am Andrew Mackay, the member for Goyder. Miss Wallace, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, please. The NT chapter of the Institute of Architects is very glad to be asked to contribute to this process today. As architects, we're pro-development. However, we also understand the importance of good process and community consultation. I could build you what I think is the most beautiful house in the world, but if I haven't listened to what you want, you will always feel disappointed. If I haven't taken the time to complete site investigations and take expert advice of a structural engineer, the house may look beautiful for a short time, but will be built on unsound foundations. If I haven't consulted the authorities and community, my house may have negative impacts on others that I haven't considered. The NT chapter of the AIA is broadly supportive of the idea of coordination and clarity of pathways for development in the government system. We acknowledge that the system is currently overburdened, erratic and slow. However, we are uncomfortable with the scale of this proposal and the decision-making powers proposed for the Territory Coordinator. We do not believe that the current slowness in the system is caused by protest from the public or nefarious anti-development interests from either within or without government. It's simply an issue of capacity in the public service. When I started working in the NT, there was a one-stop shop authority coordination meetings and easily contractable wise heads in departments who could be called to unravel traffic jams. These meetings and people no longer exist. The old pathways that kept projects moving did not circumnavigate expert advice or public comment and scrutiny. They were common sense solutions that supported the existing systems to work better. The members of the Institute of Architects work on multiple developments simultaneously with developers of all sizes. We are concerned that the Territory Coordinator role will champion politically sensitive or large projects over the everyday projects and give big business a pathway to queue jump projects by smaller developers. This will compound the existing capacity issues that these small developers are already struggling to absorb and create more uncertainty, cost and time delay for the everyday projects that fuel our economy. Large mining or agricultural developers, while politically noisy about delay and cost, are in reality better placed to absorb the risks that are intrinsic to all development than the smaller developers that we believe will be left behind in the proposed new system. The small developers the NT architects work for are mostly local people who invest the profits back into the Territory community. Large outside developers, despite their oversized presence, often have small, long-term NT footprints, and the majority of profits leave the Territory, allowing, say, one or two large developments with a concentrated impact to take precedence in the system ahead of a number of smaller Territory-based projects with broader and longer-term impact is counterproductive to supporting the sustainable development in the Territory and breaking the boom and bust cycle that we experience. We're also extremely concerned about the lack of transparency and opportunity for public comment and consultation in the process outlined in the bill, especially when coupled with the proposed amendments to the petroleum planning and water legislation that will remove the right of appeal to NTCAT. Successful development can never be forced on a community. As architects, we are well aware of the frustrations of NIMBYism and how change-adverse communities can be. However, a government's role is not to circumnavigate, but to represent community, to make space for community scrutiny and comment, to listen and adapt projects to include community concerns or ambitions, and sometimes to find the wisdom in your noise. The community will not thank you for faster development, no matter how positive it is, if they're excluded from the process. The public consultation of the Territory Coordinator Bill itself has been an example of this. During the consultation, it was made clear to the public that decisions relating to the Heritage Act were to be excluded from the influence of the Territory Controller. However, the bill now tabled gives the Territory Controller remit in decisions of NT heritage. The public have not been given an opportunity to comment on this change, and we believe further public consultation of the full bill needs to be tabled. It is very common for intricate systems to seem unreasonably complicated and slow from the outside. It's very hard for non-experts to understand the importance of interdependencies and checks and balances. NTG have experts in your public service whose life career have been to aid sustainable development of the NT for the benefit of the community. You already have good systems in place that protect community input and good process from the pressure of big businesses. Please resource and support your existing systems to work better. Circumnavigating the wisdom of experts in the community will not provide the NT with a long-term positive impact, a positive development that we all want to see. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll jump into the questions here unless there's any further opening statements you'd like to make.
Yeah, I have a few. In addition to our submission, like Miriam says, we think the concept of the Territory Coordinator is sound if the bill is amended. The transparency and accountability of the Territory Coordinator and the Minister are required for the people of the NT to be confident in the government decisions and actions. Ensuring the long-term wellbeing of the NT people and environments are the most important aspect of government undertakings and should therefore be the highest priority of the Territory Coordinator. Making rushed decisions without public notice and consultation for the benefit of few speaks to corruption and greed, resulting in long-term costs to the people and environments. In regard to the rights and liberties of individuals under the Territory Coordinator Bill, the rights of freedom and of opinion and expression are denied in the short term, which we believe in the long term will result in the denied right to work and education. In regard to the institution of Parliament under the Territory Coordinator Bill, we believe the representation of the people of Australia is denied and the role of Parliament to keep a check on the work of government is denied, since the tabled annual reports are not enough. The Territory Coordinator is not an elected position. It would seem to be in the best interest of this senior public servant to have all decisions and work scrutinised by the public so that the Territory Coordinator is not compromised by politics. We are disappointed by the lack of consideration and inclusion of the public views that formed the consultation process. By publishing declarations, outcomes, notices, requests, plans, decisions, and other documents and outcomes of the Territory Coordinator's work, followed by providing public consultation, all the decisions and formal outcomes of the Territory Coordinator's work become public documents, with decisions informed by a range of experts independent of the proponents of any project. We feel the bill in its current form will not create a system that has sensible and transparent processes. Each of our three pillars of Parliament, the legislative, executive and judiciary, need to be strong in their professional competence, strong in their high ethical behaviour and strong in their commitment to the Territory people.
Thank you. I'll now open up for questions and I'll ask one quickly. Just touching on your opening address, Ms Wallace. In the submission, and I just want to clarify the Australian Institute of Architects position relating to the inclusion of the Heritage Act 2011. In the submission, it says here that we believe it is in the interest of the people of the NT to include the Heritage Act, and then ... I'm wondering if that's meant to be exclude. I'm just trying to what the position on the inclusion of the Heritage Act is. If you could clarify that for me, please.
Look, we just think that it needs to go back to public consultation and needs to go back to a broader consideration. I believe that there are potential conflicts between federal law and territory law when it comes to the Heritage Act, but there are other experts who know better about that, and I think are also presenting to you. We just are really cautious of the fact that this hasn't been discussed and it's been excluded from the process today.
So there's no position whether you think it's a good inclusion or a bad inclusion?
We would take that on notice, I think.
Any further questions from the committee? Just Member for Drysdale.
Yeah, just one quick one. I heard the authority coordination meetings that were done in the past. I'd just be interested to actually hear more about that, how they worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, they were really excellent meetings. Our interaction with them as architects was in the planning process. And so we would make a meeting with the town planners. They would coordinate NTFRS, sometimes the police, power and water, heritage if it was appropriate, environment if it was appropriate, and get those people in one room at the beginning of the project. And it meant that without all these people who had historical knowledge of the area that we were going to develop in, they could give us, let us know that, say, the sewer there will definitely need to be upgraded. Information that we can start to process really well. But also when then our projects came onto their tables, they were already aware of what we were trying to achieve, and it made the process so much smoother with everyone understanding what was going on. And just having everyone in one table was excellent. And we were told that they were stopped because of capacity.
Thank you.
The member for Johnston.
Thank you for your submission. Thank you for appearing today. And I was very happy to see you describing yourselves as optimistic, professional optimists. I think of myself like that as well. So you've talked about the need, and for example, around that question with the Heritage Act of better consultation and going out to the community. You've just given an example of what that might look like. Have you got ideas about how that could be embedded into this bill to try and make sure that it's operating in a way that addresses some of the concerns that people have raised?
Do you mean the written bill or the language?
No, sorry. Consultation processes within that. Like, have you got any ideas about how we can look at embedding consultation more robustly into this bill?
Only so far as when something that needs to be, something that's decided, or for example, the Heritage Act, there's something to discuss, that it would be published and then a consultation period provided, and then however that is done, we would hope there would be face-to-face consultation like this, as well as the opportunity for online and written submissions.
And you've talked about a 60-day consultation period, which we've heard from some other witnesses as well. So is there a reason you came to that particular figure?
Yeah, in the online forum, which we participated in, that was something that was raised as, I believe, the idea came from the South Australian Territory, the South Australian Coordinator. I think they have a different name for it there. Yeah. But that time frame allows for people who happen to be away or extremely busy with work or unwell to still have time to make a submission, whereas 2 weeks is a very short time frame. 30 days is often not long enough, but 60 days enables a wider range of people to have a say, and also for a number of forums to be held.
Yeah, thank you. And as you said, it draws on what's happening in other places. I think that 60 days, we've heard that as well. I'm also interested in your views on what, very broadly, what economic prosperity looks like for the long term. Part of our role is to be advising the government on making laws for the long-term future of the Northern Territory. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that in relation to this particular proposal.
We're not legislative or legal experts in any way, but what we understand is at the moment there is not enough government funding to cover basics like good housing, good educational facilities, good medical facilities. That's what good long-term funding looks like, enough money to support the poorest and most vulnerable people in our society. That's broad, if that's what you're asking.
Kind of. Miriam, I saw you nodding. Did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, there's what we're seeing right now in the impact of the system. You know, we have small developers who, when they're sitting in uncertainty of a project, especially with the impact of time on cost at the moment, or they may have put upfront money into a project and they're sitting for months waiting for authority decisions, and that impacts their funding, impacts the likelihood that the project's going to be able to go ahead. And these are people who are trying to invest in our community, being stifled by the system. And so making the system fair for them without taking away public scrutiny is really important. And I think the second thing to think about is we're seeing now in these kind of very large projects that are coming in as emergency responses to some of the issues that we have, that money is essentially siloed. So it's going to one or two hands, and it's not spreading, evenly throughout the community. If there were multiple small projects that will take longer, it would be a much more equitable spread of that opportunity for development and economical development. And it also, if we're just talking about development, these large projects give people one option for, in Alice Springs, 100 and something new units that will all look the same. Rather than if you spread that development money evenly, we get multiple options for people, and we get a much more equal and flexible system of development over time. It's just going to take a little bit more effort, time and patience. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. And when you talked about delays, I think you mentioned this earlier, like sometimes projects are significantly delayed, and that's something that this bill purports to address. I know you talked about this earlier, but is there anything further you want to say about what the causes of those delays are and how we might address them?
At the moment, our experience is very much this capacity issue within the public service. I don't think that it's anyone's bad will or any one particular person, but we're just getting really inconsistent decisions. Things that used to take 6 months are taking 18 months. They're going through multiple hands because staff changes, and for Alice Springs, we're getting pushed to Darwin, and we don't have local support. Water is completely opaque at the moment. I have one project where we're waiting on upgrades in a remote community before a lot can be released. Funding is there for the building. We can't release the lot. We can't progress the project, and Water is unable to give us any kind of time frame. So it is absolutely true that there are big roadblocks and delays at the moment, but I think a secondary system is probably not the answer. I think resourcing the experts on the ground is a much better way of doing things, and even potentially individual coordinators within departments, and that's their role, is to connect people. But maintaining that expert connection and knowledge of the subject matter is really important, I think, ultimately to make good decisions as well as fast decisions.
Yeah.
With regards to the proposed amendments that have been suggested in your submission, and I know the vast majority relate specifically towards the transparency and consultation. With regards to the ones that aren't specifically tied to that,
Are or aren't?
That aren't, sorry. So the ones that aren't the standard the 60 days or publish responses, the others. The other amendments that you're suggesting, one of the ones you suggest is the rearranging of the primary principle. And I was wondering if you could just touch on that, of why you believe that the rearranging of the order of the primary principle to have the potential social and environmental outcomes above the driving the economic prosperity. I wonder if you could just touch on that from your perspective.
Yeah, so that speaks to the rights of people to have a better place to live, really. That's what we're asking, that the consideration of people's environments and health needs and education needs are put before development at all cost. So these are important decision-making parameters, and if it's development at any cost, then the people with the power and wealth to make big projects go ahead to get the significant project or major project status will be putting together big projects, and the smallest people in the community will be left behind, potentially, unless they're put to the forefront of any decision-making process. And actually, by looking at projects through that lens, then we're more likely to create a place where we retain our skilled people in services delivery.
We're also very aware. We're just also very aware of our fragile environment in the territory and how easily that can be broken and irrevocably so. And so that's also a really big consideration in how we choose to develop.
Just going back to that point, trying to tie that, I guess, into a recommendation, would you be supportive of something that created a more even field for smaller individuals that want to invest? And so it's not limited to large capital, and that there's a more even playing field. I'm just trying to tie that thought into how we could do a recommendation.
I think it's just rearranging, as we suggested, the priorities. I don't think it's about in that particular instance, it's not about the scale of the proposal. I think it's about the reasons behind whether a development goes ahead and the priorities of that development.
Cool, thank you.
Is there any more questions? On behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come in today. It's very much appreciated. Thank you for such a detailed submission and finding the time to come in again with short notice, and we do appreciate that.
Can I say one final thing in regards to your point, the point about smaller investors? I think there is definitely a place for that mentioned somewhere in the bill. It's just not right at the priorities.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.